Do you want to relax? Are you having trouble sleeping or focusing? CBD reduces anxiety, chronic pain, seizures, PTSD, depression. Try our CBD gummies or chocolates. You will be very satisfied. Visit cbdcollections.net. cbdcollections.net. cbdcollections.net.
David Ritter, and David is an independent documentary producer and director. He's cut his teeth doing audio, video production, building the career within the music field, and then within the documentary field, doing both directing and producing activities. He is primarily until now been known to be the gentleman who created Germantown, the lost story of Seaport Town, Jamaica. He has a dynamite, very thought-provocative thing to bring to our attention that we need to pay very careful attention to. And to do the interview is my partner in crime, Janice. Janice, takes it away.
Well, thanks, Chris. Welcome back, David. It's been a while.
Good to be here. About a decade, hasn't it?
Yes, it has literally been 10 years. I was looking at the date of when we did our interview, and it was exactly 10 years ago. So for those of you who are new to this podcast, just type in David Ritter, #1, and then you'll hear the interview that we had with David 10 years ago. Time flies, you know? So we've had very new people who don't know about you. So let's begin by telling us about your Jamaican Affinity.
Well, I guess it all kind of started with inheriting my aunt's record collection and putting the needle to the groove of The Harder They Come soundtrack.
Okay.
That's the shortest answer I can give you, but growing up in Jamaica, half my family being there, I suppose just a natural connection to it. But my origins, my birth was in Haiti, where another half of my family's from, but I've made my way back to Jamaica over the years, on and off. I've spent long stints, 3 years at a time, and so on, and so it's a place that's been a part of my life, on and off throughout my life.
Yeah, but and the fact that you're a filmmaker, The Harder They Come, that was one of the first feature Jamaican movies. So,
I know. I've been in touch with the Hensel family, Perry Hensel's daughter. She's been very interested in a lot of the films I've done, and I've been in touch with her over the years.
Yeah. So, out of many, one people, that's Jamaica's motto. Give us your executive summary of German in Jamaica and some other of their contributions. Because when people look at you, we know that you don't fit the stereotype of what a typical Haitian would look like. Correct?
Correct. And this is the thing that you'll find throughout the world. There's always going to be some outlier, some demographic of people who are, not the same as completely as the others, maybe physiologically or even sometimes culturally. There are some differences you can find in most societies, even very homogeneous ones. So, but the German people have been migrating throughout the world, be it everywhere throughout South Central America, Mexico, and the West Indies. You'll find throughout the Caribbean, you'll find German migrations to Cuba and the Dominican Republic and Haiti and Jamaica. It's not an exception.
Yeah, that's true. What got you interested in a media-oriented career?
Well, very young, you have stars in your eyes, but I'm very uninterested in a media-oriented career at this point in my life. Is getting to know the inner workings of media and how corrupt it can be at the upper echelons of it. I now do media purely just for my own and others' edification, and because I enjoy sharing stories and things that I'm passionate about. I work as an EMT professionally, and I also moonlight as a security analyst. But media is a passion that's, quite often brings little to no money, more often than bringing money. So, as a career, I have lost interest in it.
Well, you're living in a really interesting time, because I don't think back in the old days, the dinosaurs, we were more dependent on the mainstream media. But being independent, you could survive being an independent filmmaker, because, for example, you're a journalist, I'm a journalist, Chris is a journalist. Would we have been able to do this 20 years ago? Probably not. But because the internet has sort of leveled the playing field, I think that gives an opportunity to give voice to some other people that normally wouldn't get it. And what's unique about you is that you're able to give voice to groups within your ethnic group that may not have been considered. And as I stated in our first interview, it's always good to have people speak their own, tell their own story. Because if you allow another group to tell it, they may have some nefarious agenda. So it's good that you are telling people your experience. What general wisdom or someone wanting to enter the field would you give them?
Well, I think if they aspire to be a part of whatever the status quo is, or whatever corporations or the mainstream media aspire to have them tout, I would say then don't do it. That's my first bit of advice. Find an honest job. But if you're doing it because you really care about the craft of maybe being a filmmaker, or whatever your medium is, and you really care about telling a story, then I would say just find subject matter and topics and people and things that you genuinely care about. And if you have a passion for something, follow that. And work within your means and your limitations, but be as forthright and honest. And I think inherently you're always going to find bias in any medium. But work as hard as you can to be objective and tell all sides of the story.
Yeah, and that's why it's important to have an independent outlet. You're doing new work on neocolonialism. Help us to understand some of the principles that undergird the practice.
Well, at this point, the geopolitical chessboard is being reconstructed. So for many years, the U.S. was at the helm. Prior to that, England and a lot of European nations were dominating and back and forth and jockeying for power throughout the world. Now things aren't the same anymore, and now we're seeing new countries, new nation states rise up. I think behind the scenes, I think it transcends even nation states. I think there are banking cartels that are trying to manipulate the world playing field, corporations, and a very, very tiny elite few. Not even, I shouldn't say elect, people who have forced themselves into power, who are pulling a lot of the strings, which goes into what people might think is a conspiracy theory. Well, it's not a conspiracy theory. It's a conspiracy, most certainly, but I think there are multinational corporations, banks, and they've formed organizations that they get past the sovereignty of our nation states, of various nations throughout the world. But definitely there are, I would say China has been looking at a resource grab internationally. And we are at a point where people are worried about fuel, food, resources are becoming very unstable, as we are currently in a food shortage internationally and even now in the US. Gas prices are skyrocketing. So that, I think that's why countries like China have been looking to dominate various areas of Africa, South Central America, and places like Jamaica. They plan on taking over world resources in their own interest. And I think it is definitely dangerous, because as we've seen, when nation states attempt these grabs, whether it's in the Napoleonic era or it's now, it comes with bloodshed, it comes with conflict, and it comes with manipulation. And we're at a point where one of the biggest elements of combat is psyop and psychological combat via media, internet, so on and so forth. And I think people are swayed to make decisions that are not in their best interest and not even their own ideas. I think they're manufactured, contrived, and people have lost.
Who are the major stakeholders in the current practice, and what motivates them?
Well, I think that industry has been slowing down exponentially, you've seen in the West, and that people have been shifting. Corporations, I say people, I should actually say corporations, because corporations are not people. They are collectives run by...
A lot of politicians are trying to say corporations are people, though.
And I'm aware of that, and it's absurd, as any reasonable person knows. That's an absurd statement. But corporations, and I think a lot of the banking industries, the money lenders and the banking cartels, I use the word cartel because they quite certainly are cartels, are shifting their focus to China. And if you look at most major corporations, they have many of their bureaus, even their head bureaus and manufacturing is being done in China. So there has been for now decades a focus of shifting industry to China. And I think the reasoning to this is various variables to this, is that they have very cheap labor. That was the initial reason they moved industry to China. Now, what they're finding is that you have that and massive manpower, a workforce, an available workforce. And not only that, but skilled labor. The Chinese vocational training and Chinese education has been focusing on teaching their people, their youth, valuable skills. Unlike in the West, where our universities have been focusing on gender studies and sexualizing children and ridiculous foolishness that has no value, and I don't care how controversial that is to people, no value. And they're going where they can find people with advanced machinery training and so on and so forth. Because in the U.S., if you want to find those workers, you could have a summit and you look for a job fair, and you might get a couple hundred people show up. If you hold that in China, you could fill an auditorium, a stadium. Mm-hmm. So that's the reasoning. They're shifting this, and as they do this, China's going to need to do more mining, more drilling, and get more and more resources for this massive nation they have of billions of people.
Mm-hmm. I think China is going to the direction of being self-sufficient. They won't have to export anything but their products, and then they'll buy them cheaply because they would be able to sustain themselves. And the fact that they're buying up all this farmland in the U.S. as well, not just Africa, but the mm-hmm. U.S. And then they're able to ship the food to their community. You hear what I'm saying? So
yeah, absolutely.
They can't feed their country, their nation. They have the farms, they own the land to grow the food, to ship it, and they can sustain themselves.
Absolutely, and I empathize with that. I understand the Chinese people should have the right to prosper and grow and have the means to survive. I'm completely for the Chinese people surviving, but at the same time, I'm also for people in Africa and the West Indies and the United States. I'm for the people of the West surviving as well. So there comes the conflict, doesn't it? And my want is for people in places like Jamaica or various nations in Africa or in the United States to wake up to this, and they need to learn to be competitors, and they need to take their resources back. And that's when the concept of nationalism comes into play. And I don't mean people hear the word nationalism and they think I might mean some insane militant mindset where you kill everyone who's not like you, as it's not what I mean. I mean a vested interest in the nation that you are from. Americans should be nationalistic. They should care about their nation, as should